Welcome, everyone. My name is Elana Wien, and I am the Executive Director for the SRE Network. Thank you for joining us for our 2022 SRE Network Virtual Convening, Return to Basics. If you would like to use closed captioning, please click on the closed captioning button at the bottom of the screen. Now, let's take a moment to locate ourselves in time and space. It is Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. I am speaking to you from my home in Ventura, California. The ground on which I live are the ancestral lands of the Chumash peoples. If you feel so moved, please share in the chat where you're joining us from. Thank you and welcome. I am so excited to be here with all of you for these next 2 days of learning. SRE Network members and grantees, Jewish professionals, board members, funders, clergy, and more. It is such a hopeful sign to me that so many from across our Jewish community have taken the time to be here together. I am grateful for each of your contributions and for the space we're creating together for these much-needed conversations. Today marks our 5th year gathering together for learning and connection. For those of you that have been with us on this journey for some time now, you will recall that last year we gathered to revitalize our commitments, and the year prior to shelter from the storm. Why, you ask, are we returning to basics this year? To answer that question, we first need to start with a different one. How are you doing? How are we doing as individuals? How are we doing as organizations? And how are we doing as a community? What have we gained and what have we lost over these last 12 months? Let's take a moment to name what's difficult and what's painful. Anti-Semitism is on the rise in our communities and around the world. In the United States, we passed the horrific milestone of 1 million lives lost to COVID in just over 2 years. The leaked Supreme Court memo suggests that not only fundamental reproductive rights will be taken away, but other important protections will also be at risk. New mothers and parents are struggling to feed their newborns because they cannot locate baby formula due to supply chain shortages. The war in Ukraine, now raging on for over 3 months, continues to jeopardize innocent lives, democracy, and global security. And collectively, we have been witness to mass shootings in our supermarkets, in our schools, in our places of worship. 10 precious lives were lost in a racist mass shooting less than a month ago in Buffalo, New York. 19 children and 2 teachers killed in a mass shooting at an elementary school 2 weeks ago in Texas. These events and more have had a serious impact on all of us, mentally, emotionally, physically. And the brunt of these losses have been disproportionately impacting and will continue to impact too many based on race, class, gender, ability, orientation, and identity. Because we are still so far from our goals of creating a truly safe, respectful, and equitable society. So we take all of that with us and we bring it to our workplace and to our communities, and including our faith community. And we do that in the context of massive shifts in the workplace itself. The Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffling. According to a recent global poll by PwC, an estimated 1 in 5 workers say they will change jobs in the next year. 1 in 5 globally. So we're living together through a period of great disruption, of great pain, loss, and inequity. But we are also seeing tremendous growth, courage, and bright spots. And the purpose of these 2 days together is to focus on the here and now, on what we can do, what is in our control. And that leads us to this year's theme, Return to Basics. Because positive change starts with the most basic of steps, focusing on how we treat each other. This convening is intended to inspire, educate, and energize our collective efforts. We understand that this is no easy task. but it is imperative to build the goodwill and resilience to make real, lasting change. The very nature of the challenges we're here to address mean that bright spots may be harder to find. Many times, positive change happens behind the scenes, and it takes time. I'm moved by the bravery of our panelists and speakers, and I'm heartened by the stories of courage and transformation you will hear over the next 2 days. A through line of all of the research and stories we hear is that workplace culture must change for respectful, safe, and equitable environments to emerge. And that culture change can start or be reinforced here over these 2 days and in the months to come. I want to invite us to ask ourselves some questions to think about while we're here together. What are the tangible changes that need to be made within my organization, from the makeup of my leadership team to the policies that guide our workplace interactions? What are the conversations that need to be had among our leadership and among our team members to improve workplace culture? How do we build resilient and intersectional workplaces and communal spaces? What are those stories of success that we can share with each other? Who among you will return next year with your own stories of tangible progress? Inclusivity, equity, and a commitment to repair and progress will ensure the longevity and diversity of our Jewish spaces. Let these questions be both a provocation and inspiration as we return to basics and engage in this worthy pursuit together. Earlier this week, Jews around the world celebrated the holiday of Shavuot, where the Israelites stood at Sinai and received the Torah. What Torah, what teachings will we receive today? Let's learn from each other. Let's be honest with each other, and let's hold each other accountable for real progress this year. A few logistics before we begin. A reminder that as part of the registration process, you each reviewed and agreed to our SRE network norms and convening code of conduct. You can also see copies of these documents in the chat and on the menu bar. Feel free to reach out to us at convening@srenetwork.org if you have any questions or concerns. You can use the chat function to interact with other attendees and comment on the sessions throughout the 2 days. During the Q&A sessions, you can use the questions button to ask questions to the presenters. Our convening conversations and our work more broadly involve sensitive conversations around power, gender, justice, accountability, and repair. If you find yourself in distress, please take the time to step away and find the space that you need. Recordings of convening content will be made available on our website after the convening concludes. And with that, I'm excited to welcome Arielle Rivera Corman, a Jewish educator, musician, prayer leader, and lifelong learner. Arielle was the founding director of Ammud, the Jews of Color Torah Academy, and just finished a musical tour. Arielle is an inspiring human and poet who brings together music and Torah to build community. We're so happy to invite her to share some words of Torah with you to begin our day together. Arielle?
Hi, my name is Arielle Rivera Corman. I'm the co-founder and former executive director of Ammud, the Jews of Color Torah Academy, and I'm also an incoming rabbinical student at the Jewish Theological Seminary. I'm so grateful to the SRE network and to all of you for inviting me and allowing me to share a couple words of Torah as you begin your learning together. So this year in the SRE network, you are returning to basics. And I think this is such a brilliant theme and brilliant concept in the Shemitah year. We're currently in the year of Shemitah. What is Shemitah? It is a year of rest for the land, and it's also a year of rest for ourselves. And you'll see all throughout the Jewish world, many people interpreting that in different ways. When I think about what it means to rest the land, it's really a resetting. It's an opportunity to look at what is, to look at the ground that supports our yearly harvest, to see what it looks like, to see what grows naturally out of it when we let the land lay fallow. So today, in the spirit of resetting, I want to share with you an experience that I had when I was living in Jerusalem, and to focus our attention on a basic assumption that we have in Judaism and in our conception of the Bible, and to show what a slight rethinking, a slight resetting of that basic assumption did for my own relationship to Judaism, and really what a slight resetting of any basic assumption can do. So I grew up hearing that Adam, the first human, was made of clay. So the story goes that Adam is formed from clay and Eve is taken from his rib. And when I dug a little bit more deeply into that concept, I learned something a little bit different. So let's see what that's all about. Where does the word clay come from? It seems that that comes from an English translation of the Torah. And I want to think a little bit about what clay is. So clay is solid. It's the most solid kind of soil you can think of, even though it's malleable. And it's very hard to get through. It's not like silt. When you think of what it means to be made from clay, it is a very concrete way of relating to land in particular. And indeed, the word for land in Hebrew is Adamah, and the name of Adam is Adam. So there's a connection there. And I've always thought about those two as being totally intertwined. Now, fast forward to living in Jerusalem. I'm a multiracial person. My ancestry is traceable really all over the world. And so I was surrounded by people who I saw as, feeling very grounded in place. And I didn't feel that way, particularly because I was interacting and becoming friends with many Filipino guest workers who were living in Jerusalem, and just felt my own transience and my own being made of diaspora really, really strongly. And I started looking at Filipino mythology and pre-colonial culture just as a way to ground myself. And I came across this creation story, and I'm going to read it for you. It's short, and it's out of Mabel Cook Cole's collection. When the world first began, there was no land, but only the sea and the sky, and between them was a bird. One day the bird, which had nowhere to light, nowhere to land, grew tired of flying about, so she stirred up the sea until it threw its waters against the sky. The sky, in order to restrain the sea, showered upon it many islands until it could no longer rise, but ran back and forth. Then the sky ordered the kite, the bird, to light on one of the islands to build her nest, and to leave the sea and the sky in peace. Now at the time, the land breeze and the sea breeze were married, and they had a child which was a bamboo. One day when this bamboo was floating about on the water, it struck the feet of the bird which was on the beach. The bird, angry that anything should strike it, pecked at the bamboo, and out of one section came a man, and out of one section came a woman. So this is a creation story that's common in the Ilocos, in the part of the Philippines where my grandfather is from. So what's the origin of life here? The origin of life is a bamboo, is the sea and the sky and the elements coming together in a bamboo shoot. And the cracking of the bamboo is what creates the first people. So after reading this, I went back to Genesis because I had a thought brewing, and I'm going to share it with you. Vayitzer Adonai Elohim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama, vayipach be'apav chayim, vayehi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. God formed Adam from the dust of the earth. God blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Is that clay? No, it's actually the dust of the earth combining with breath. This really struck something in me, because what it means to be grounded in place or land, when the thing you are emerging from is a combination of dust, so porous land, and breath, that's very different from clay, this very solid feature. Immediately when I heard that, when I put these two stories in conversation, it felt easier in my soul inside of me to be at peace with not being from one place. And in fact, other parts of Jewish culture started to come alive to me. For example, there is an amazing quote from Reb Simcha Bunim that says, "Everyone ought to have two pockets, each holding a slip of paper, so that they can reach for one or another slip of paper as the occasion demands. On one should be written, 'I am but dust and ashes,' and on the other, 'The world was created for me.'" So the idea of being dust and ashes felt alive to me because it's not just a kind of demeaning and sad existence, but actually dust and ash combining with breath is a thing that can bring us life. I also started thinking about the Talmud and about what it means to find home in Jewish text that came out of diaspora. And I found home in a really strong way in nigunim, in Jewish wordless melodies, because there's something about claiming my home is the breath, my home is the voice, that made me feel able to exist anywhere in the world. So my hope for you is that as you rethink the basics, you're able to just shift your perspective a little bit and notice what ought to be strengthened and kept and what ought to be seen in a slightly different way, to really change the way we can behave in the world and treat each other with dignity and respect. So I'm going to leave you with a nigun, and as I sing this song, this wordless melody, I want you to think a little bit about one basic assumption that you'd like to examine again. And this nigun comes from Nava Tehillah, a community in Jerusalem.